Hi, Jillian. Yeah, so nice to connect to you via LinkedIn. And we
Yeah.
were just saying there about this connection between your work and my work, and this
Mm.
balance between what we do in this space of self-development versus kind of social activism. Yeah, I love that. So I thought it would be really, really nice to just have a further conversation about it.
Yeah. And I love that you pick that up because, like you, it's taken me a while to name that space, right? Because my background is social development, activism, kind of cut my teeth in the world of human growth and development in social change. And, I often find myself kind of wanting to kind of preempt conversations by saying, look, I'm not a coach, like a life coach, which is not to disparage those people, but just that that's not where my life experience sits. It sits in
In social
communities
change. Yeah.
and in social change and with people, dealing with HIV/AIDS at the height of the epidemic in Zimbabwe and Mozambique after a civil war. And so, for me, the idea that self-development is a tool for social change and social good is such a ripe space for
Yeah.
us to explore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah.
I listened to your TED talk as well, which I thought was
Mm,
fab. I mean, I'd love you to tell me, like, you've lived all over the place. So you've
yeah,
been there, done that, got the t-shirt. Your TED talk
yeah,
was fascinating about the work that you were doing in Mozambique at that time. And I don't know
mm,
much, and I'd actually really like to know more about that kind of work in terms of, because it was you were kind of despairing at the idea of what we do in foreign countries in terms of foreign aid and when people go in, and
mm.
a lack of empathy or humanity around how, and it almost seems very, I don't know, you explain it, you would explained it so well in the TED talk around what some of the struggles are and what you thought
Yeah.
some of the solutions were.
Well, I think having spent, by the time I got there, I'd spent for about 6 years on the ground across Africa, designing and really initiating and implementing various kinds of development programs. And then Mozambique, the war ended there. There was a civil war. The war ended, and all sorts of international aid flooded in. And I remember going there and being in Maputo and being at the one hotel that all the expats stayed in and kind of sitting at this lavish breakfast buffet and looking around and hearing all of these other American accents and, British accents and kind of getting my first like proper glimmer of, oh, wow, it's a business, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind of like, duh, of course it was, but I was young,
Yeah.
that
You said you
incident
were
was, I was,
26 when you were doing that. Yeah.
that's
That was
right. I was
almost your
20.
like first big job kind of thing. Yeah. Pitch up
Yeah,
in
I was 20.
Mozambique. And you said this hotel was like in a, like it was surrounded, so like in a cage kind
Well,
of thing. And you
this,
described this man at the door.
yeah, so that was a lunch that we went to. What I realized was how scripted all the exchanges were, that,
Yeah.
basically local people had worked out what to say in order to curry favor with us, right? I mean, they worked out what the priorities were through the lens of the international community, and they sort of tried to figure out exactly what you wanted from them. And there we were, sitting in this restaurant that had been surrounded by this giant cage, basically to keep the locals out. And,
Mm.
to make it more gruesome, there were so many landmines during that war that the number of people who were maimed, severely disabled, it was a visual reality on every single
Mm.
street. So the surreality of kind of sitting there and having these people basically try and sell you what they thought you were there looking for. And I just had this deep sense of, oh my goodness, we are initiating a process. We are, starting a process that we believe is almost entirely beneficial. But what it does is skew, their sense of importance, their sense of
Yeah.
power, And I personally felt really compromised because
Yeah.
I had this one guy who kind of sat down with me and was basically just like, okay, so what are the priorities this year? Is it fishing projects? Is it women's projects? Tell me what you want, and I'll
What
tell
you're
you
going to do.
whatever.
Yeah.
Like, we'll be fishermen if you want us to be fishermen. We'll become
Okay.
what you want us to become. And it was just like,
Okay.
oh my gosh, this is like so
Yeah. Okay.
transactional. So I think for me, my own, it was unbelievably enlightening, if a little bit, destroying in terms of my own relationship with myself as change maker. Like I was never going to be the same again in terms of the assumptions that I carry into my interactions. Whether you're in Mozambique or, sitting in Manhattan, I don't assume anymore that when I walk into a room, somebody isn't, kind of figuring out how this change transaction is going to take place. So I think that was why I started to look ever more in through the lens of self-development, that the relationship with self is so critical. And yeah, it was
So
a
you're
very
you're
deep education.
and yeah. Oh my God, I've got so many questions about that. So because I'm just thinking how it ties in with your book, your 10 Permissions
Mm-hmm.
book. So
Mm-hmm.
you've
Mm-hmm.
kind of come from that background of all the activism, and
Right.
then almost got this cynical lens on, well, the world is a transactional place.
Right.
Um, I want to do something to make it better.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and all the well-being literature tells us, doesn't it, that actually when we do good things for other people, that in turn helps ourselves. This is kindness is
Mm-hmm.
contagious and all the rest of it. So it's a good thing. But yeah, so how do you've made that link then? So what is the work you do with the 10 Permissions book now?
Yeah. So for me, we started talking about that intersection between self-development and social activism or social
Mm,
change. I mean, for me, it's all about helping people sort of develop that sense of agency and that sense of being self-directed, that, that guy sitting across the table from me, the peep man outside the cage, everybody, where, you're at the mercy of a set of forces so much bigger than you that you don't actually feel that you have the capability to
yeah.
drive things. So, and whether it was there, or I often reference my experience in Zimbabwe working on HIV AIDS, and, again, giving people so much, giving them skills,
Mm,
giving them awareness, uh, t-shirts, money, and saying, okay, I can give them all sorts of things. I can't give them permission to make change. Only they can. So I'm the only
mm,
one having the conversation with myself about, okay, am I going to do this? What am I going to do? That real activating of will and agency and desire to take your life in new directions.
yeah.
I never experienced that in, over a decade of social change work. And for me, the point right now with the 10 permissions is that in a hugely fluid world where a
Mm,
lot of the kind of old rules of operating and a lot of the default ways of navigating our lives are unraveling, for better or for worse, there's a lot of pressure on the individual and a lot of opportunity for the individual to make decisions about how they're going to direct their lives.
yeah.
But we haven't, really helped people develop that capability to self-direct, to, make choice and make change. So I see the 10 permissions as sort of like an upgrade to your operating system for a very fluid world. It's like you've got to be very self-directed, very adaptive, because it's coming at you fast. The institutions that used to kind of hold us in place and tell us who to be and how to behave are, have lost our trust and have
Mm.
lost their currency in many ways. So yeah, it's sort of taking a
Oh,
lot of those lessons and applying them to now.
I think that's absolutely fascinating because it kind of chimes with my own research as well around. So I looked into entrepreneurship and well-being, and autonomy is a really big
Yes,
word in terms of why
huge.
people who are able to run their own businesses experience a lot more well-being from those businesses than those who are employed.
Right.
Autonomy is the key
Right.
word, and agency. And your
Mm.
story there reminds me of, and I can't remember exactly it's something about if you take a baby elephant and tie a rope around its neck and stick a
Mm.
stake in the ground, the baby elephant knows it can't pull away. And over time, that baby elephant grows up and gets really, really big. And
Yeah.
actually, it could run away, even though it has the rope around its neck and the stake in the ground,
Yeah.
because it's grown bigger and stronger. But the mentality is, I'm still stuck. Yeah.
Right.
So there's
Right.
something around giving people this agency and permission and whatever to, what's the saying about teach a man to fish and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Right.
Giving people, so there is an education piece, which is, I guess, the
Mm.
work that you're doing
Yes.
with this self-development stuff, but it's around, helping you to help yourself. And I guess some of the cynicism comes out of this idea that we're just chucking money at stuff. And how does that help people to genuinely thrive? Yeah, that's the nub
Yeah.
of your work? Yeah,
And that, in fact, we were the ones setting the agenda. We were the
yeah.
ones directing that ship, and they were just jumping
We
on
have a
because it was,
responsibility in a way.
yeah.
Yeah,
And in fact, we never actually got to the nub of how we would support that growth of agency and autonomy that's so necessary when you're trying to, make very profound change. I mean, the example that I often give is of, talking to people in Zimbabwe about condom use, for instance, and saying,
yeah,
obviously in the middle of a sexually transmitted epidemic, it feels like a no-brainer. And yet it's not, if it's not rooted in your culture, in your
yeah.
tradition, in your default way of operating, you have to
Hmm.
make a choice to be the one in your relationship to raise this.
Yeah,
I often talk about it being deciding you're going to be the first or
yeah,
deciding you're going to be the last. Um, these are very hard
yes.
choices to make. Like it's very hard to be that. And I look at this period that we're moving into now currently in the world as what I'm describing as a period of novel choices. We will be working jobs that we can't even define yet. We will be working with AI in ways that don't make sense to us yet. We'll
Yeah.
probably more of us have, the entrepreneurship that you're talking about. So many more of us will have to operate in that sort of style. And yet,
Mm,
as you've said, we've been raised to be that baby elephant. So we're saying to people, cool, go out and figure out how to have a portfolio career or
yeah.
start your own business. And it's like, but we haven't trained people or
Giving people the
supported them.
tools.
No.
Yep.
So I
Oh my
don't,
goodness.
my,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Because
So
for
I think
me, so one
we're
of my
all going to have to
things,
work more like that. Yeah.
we are. So absolutely. So that's that Substack. So I wrote this Substack recently on, I know
Mm.
we'd conversed about it, future of
Yeah.
women and work in the age of AI. And absolutely one of the key things I'd said at the bottom there was around this idea of lifelong learning. And I'm all for this idea of portfolio careers and this idea that, life should be a series of collecting different skill sets along the way and trying
Yes.
to find out what
Mm.
you can do in your own life in terms of your own purpose and what makes you tick. But there's big caveats with some of this stuff as well, which are it doesn't necessarily work for everybody.
No.
Yeah, one of the posts that I put on LinkedIn recently that kind of got a lot of traction was this idea that in the US, women last year, I think in 2025, 500,000 left the workforce.
Mm.
500,000 women left the workforce, and 400,000 men joined it. And they were saying that, women were leaving these toxic workplace cultures. And we know that in the UK as well, the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs is women in their 40s and 50s, which
Mm.
is lovely in a way. And in another way, it's like that balance between opportunity entrepreneurship and necessity entrepreneurship. And when
Yeah.
you're shoved into a hole, as often people in the global south are, I'm having to be an entrepreneur because they're literally, I'm scrapping together here. There's no other choices. And you
Yeah.
haven't necessarily got the tools or the time or the education or the whatever. And you're putting people in precarious positions, aren't you? And there's some fine balance there over And I suppose that's what the world argues about, the balance between autonomy and community. And
Sure.
different cultures around the world are very different like that, aren't they? I am America's very individualistic. You make your own way in the world, you stand on your own 2 feet, and that is really good for you, which is true. And then in the same time, and there's more cultures further East Asia where it's all about community, and you need to be able
Yeah.
to rely on each other and support one another and whatever. And there's some, I think, balance in the middle there. I think, yeah, both those things are important. Yeah,
Yeah, and I
so
think
I'm
as you
trying
said,
to, sorry.
no, I was going to say as more and more women, I understand the move. I understand the exodus, and
Mm.
the seeking out of more flexibility and autonomy. It makes total sense to me. As you say, it'll sit more naturally with a lot of people who more naturally be able to thrive in that role, in that
Mm-hmm.
setting and operating style. I think one, there is and will continue to be a need for support for women,
Mm.
not not in the traditional perhaps entrepreneurial sense, but a lot of what we're talking about, like you've really got to back yourself. You've got to have serious belief in your own authority to make some of these things work. And unfortunately, that's the very thing that most women have never been fully equipped with throughout the course of their lives. So it can be very, very hard to go from being some high achiever within a system to
Yep,
trying to translate into designing, developing, delivering your own thing.
different skill sets.
Totally. And
Yeah,
then also, as you say, I think we need to support each other, that there might be opportunities for us to come together in ways to co-create, to just, learn together because
yeah,
I don't know if, I'm sure the pendulum will swing towards another generation of women returning into corporate work with, great zeal. But I think for a lot of women, they're just sitting there going, it doesn't feel like a vehicle for me to actually thrive as a, carer, as an individual, as a professional. Like I'm
it's not
compromising
working.
myself on so many fronts that I'm looking
Work
for
is
an
not working.
alternative. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And how do we make that look different? So, in terms of the work you're doing, then I've got all these
Mm,
ideas buzzing around my head, in terms of this activism stuff. So, like, what would you say in terms of how do we make this better? Bearing in mind, work is going to change. Absolutely, we know
mhm.
this. In the next 5 years, we're going to see 40% of jobs, yeah, completely rejig is the forecast. Um,
Right.
yeah, what do you see in terms of like the work you're doing and stuff? What do you think it looks like, and how do we make it better?
Are we talking specifically for women?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
my
so
specific, I mean, that's my specific
yeah,
genre of interest is
of
women
course.
work,
Yeah, that's what I
well-being,
thought.
and
Yeah.
yeah. I mean,
So
it knocks on to everybody, but yeah, start with women.
I think, so I feel passionate at this moment about something that I don't yet know what it would look like in practice, but I think it relates to the comment that you resonated with to that post, which is I've got a 17-year-old son. And every single one of the high achievers in his grade is female. Every one of them. They are knocking it out of the park here, there, and everywhere. And he's, his girlfriend, his female friends, they're got already have polished CVs. They're on it. They're this. And I look at them and I literally feel like, oh my God, you think that this is, gearing you up for what I'm not sure, but the idea that this mentality and high achievers mindset, which I think is where a lot of super capable young women kind of get into, which is
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to get all the marks, I'm going to hold all the top positions, but I'm also agreeable. I call it authority over achievement. So
Yeah.
learn to be yourself. Don't learn to be the straight A student. And this comes also, I'm guessing, from your own experience too, of what it feels like to be a young woman
Yeah.
where your currency, if it exists at all, is around, what you achieve. And I think we need to prepare a generation of young women to move into a space where they are more confident in their own voice, in their own opinions, in the weight of their ideas, in their boundaries, all of that autonomy, agency space as like a deliberate intervention. It needs to be worked on. It doesn't miraculously develop itself. Um, and I don't think we're doing anything about that at all. And so you wonder why you have women who, get to a certain point and they kill themselves. Um, and then when it comes to actually sort of ascending, if you will, to genuine power, and I think it's about our relationship with power
Yeah.
as young women, that we're very uncomfortable. It's
Because
fine
we
if I got,
know, Jillian, we know that it's that confidence gap or the ambition gap they call it, this tall poppy
yeah,
syndrome, that it's a gendered phenomenon. It's a gendered congruent trait for men to be confident and ambitious and slightly nonchalant with it. And it's a
right,
gendered congruent trait for women to not shine the light because who does
right,
she think she is?
right,
And
right.
we know that, and we know that. And then women get put in these positions where you're competing against each other as well. Because as much as you say it's about our achievement, it's also still about the looks, still about the beauty, still about the
Of
attracting the
course.
guy and whatever. So you've put yourself, there's a certain category of yeah, as you say, overachieving. What fascinates me is speaking to you in South Africa, and you're talking to me about the exact same phenomenon. My daughter's just turned 18, exact same dynamics that I see here. I have loads of friends in Canada, same dynamics. I know your American background, same dynamics. The global north, there
Yeah,
is amazingly this like cross country culture, I guess social media
yeah.
travels, and we're all living in, it's just gone on steroids for girls. I read the other day about, and I know we're talking about the male loneliness epidemic and the male mental health crisis, which is absolutely valid and true. But the stat
Mm.
I read the other day was something horrific. It
Other way
used to
around,
be
yeah.
in 2017, 1 in 9 girls had a significant mental health problem. It's now 1 in 5.
Mm.
And I was thinking, wow, like that's a lot of angst. It's a lot of
Yeah.
angst, and there is a pressure to performance. Um,
Yes.
and then yeah, and then we blame ourselves for not having the confidence. But I just think for me, I try and look at it in like the scheme of history. I think where we've come in 100 years, I'm not surprised that women sit on
Of
those top
course.
tables and go, ah,
Right.
because 100 years ago, like we weren't even in the workforce. 50 years ago, we weren't even in the workforce.
I
It
know.
is not a surprise that we're like, huh. And it's definitely not a surprise that we're burning out in these careers that are very hierarchical, very laddered, and the workforce looks completely different than it did 100 years ago.
Right.
And this is my whole
Right.
thing. And we need to
Yeah.
have different ways of working. Um, and I was chatting last week actually to a couple of life coaches on it. Well, they do lots of leadership work actually as well, on
Mm.
a podcast, Say It Sister, and they were saying about, we had this debate about, they were saying about feminized ways of leadership. And
Mm.
I was saying, it's that I struggle to unpick that word sometimes. When we talk about feminine leadership being collaborative,
Mm.
because I think it's really hard to get men on board when we talk about feminine leadership. When we
Right.
classify it as feminine, it's really tricky.
Yeah.
And the thing that I've been unpicking in my own head recently, and that was another thing on my other Substack, was this difference and this backlash we're finding between cultural feminism and liberal feminism. Have you come across this thing
Mm.
before?
Well, I know the whole article now that the New York Times put up where they changed the headline from "Did women ruin the workplace" to "Did liberal feminism ruin the workplace?"
And can conservative feminism fix it? And I really unpicked that. Like, excuse me, my flu. I really unpicked that because Liberal feminism is this idea that women and men are equal, therefore, or are sufficiently the same that we deserve equal opportunities. Cultural feminism says, actually, women and men are different, but that's fine. We still deserve equal opportunities.
Mm,
And the liberal feminists will argue that if you go down the cultural feminism route, which I think, excuse me, is what they're talking about when they say, girls need to be girls and women's biology affects
right.
their life course, which it does. Um, if we go down that route of saying women are
Goodness.
natural caregivers and women are natural in terms of, nurturers and
Mm,
motherhood and all those things, they are absolutely wonderful things. And there's validity in not devaluing the feminine or devaluing this idea that, feminine leadership is a good thing.
no, please.
But I just don't think we'll get men bought in. That's my worry.
No, I agree with you.
If we call
So,
it feminine leadership and say it's just important to stay at home with your kids and raise your kids, which it is, men aren't
right.
going to buy that. And it will silo women. And so it's that really like weird, do you play them at their own game? Do you do in the 1980s
Mm,
as we did with the shoulder pads
right.
and the girl boss? And the
Right.
like, do you remember Melanie Griffith and Working Girl?
Oh, yeah.
I
Oh,
watched that
yeah.
as a teenager. I was like, oh wow. Like, so do you try and beat them at their own game and be masculine? And the conservative feminists are saying, no, you be feminine. But yeah, I think it's fascinating to unpick. I don't know if you've got any thoughts about that kind of balance between women as equally the same, sufficiently the same as men, that we should have equal rights when it comes to work and wearing trousers and voting and all the rest of it, versus actually women are the only people who can give birth.
Right.
Therefore, we do need different exceptions around maternity leave and breastfeeding support and all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Lots of thoughts. I mean, I
Okay,
think,
head mash, isn't it?
yeah, I think, when I first started talking about this content with female leaders, which when I was in the process before the book was launched, and I was just sort of testing out these 10 permissions and thinking about this theme of permission. And I ended up, with a big group of female executives. And it was like when I said the word permission, there was
Mhm.
like this collective kind of groan of like, oh. And what then happened was this just almost like stream of consciousness surfacing of the extent to which so many of them felt that they were constantly earning their acceptance over and over and over again, and that the slightest move could lead to it being rescinded. So that their position within that system was still precarious, right? It wasn't an assumed one. And that, what they started to talk about was just the mental load of having to kind of calibrate their acceptability all the time, you know, from a looks perspective, from a dress perspective, from a how they spoke, the way in which they put their ideas forward. And it was just like, I'm so exhausted of always trying to figure
That
out,
mental load and the
mm,
tightrope that you walk to be
yeah,
agentic and gain
right,
authority versus agreeable and not too much of a bitch.
right.
It's it's
And
it's
that
it's exhausting.
totally exhausting. And I think it is also one of the things that leads women to just say, I'm out, because,
Sod you. I'll do my own
among
thing.
many things, I think that constant, permission seeking behavior, which is implicit in every single interaction. And the myth being, and this is where I think it, women have been working in spaces for quite a long time. My mother did, but she was a secretary. As long as she was supportive, it was fine.
Secretary, nurse, teacher.
Right. So, but when you actually try to assume power and
Mm-hmm.
authority, that's when it gets unbelievably fraught and problematic. And that's when the idea that once you get there, oh, well, then you're fine. Then you can just kind of relax and be you and do your thing. It's like, no, actually, it gets so much worse because that's when the bitch and the all these things rear their heads. And so I think, for the longest time, it was we weren't capable.
Mm.
Now it's like, quite clearly it's not an intelligence issue or a capability issue. All the,
No, in
you
fact,
know,
Jillian, I speak to people and they say they quite like hiring women because they're doers.
right.
That's the other
Yeah.
thing. Somebody was telling me recently the most productive people in the workplace are mothers with two children. The second most
Yeah.
productive people in the workplace are mothers with three children.
Yes.
Because we have to prove ourselves. And then we're like, why have they burned out? Why is
Right.
it that
Exactly.
women are 20? So working mothers are 28% more likely to burn out than working fathers. Why is that? Yeah.
Right.
So we are proving, and then we
All the
gather
time.
autoimmune diseases. And so it's really complex. The other thing that I've come across is this idea that it takes a third to change the culture. So once you have a third of women on
Mm,
boards, or a
mm,
third of women like in an organization, you stop feeling like the minority.
mm.
So it's like we need this critical mass to just get there and feel like I'm not the only person in the room saying this. And
Yeah.
so that's also worrying, isn't it? Because if women decide that they're completely opting out of cultural corporate culture, I mean, maybe they will go on and start their own businesses and hire their own staff. I interviewed female entrepreneurs like that who've gone like, sod that. I mean, that
Mm,
was me as well. Sod that. I'm not working for that corporate thing
mm,
anymore.
mm,
I'm going to
mm.
create my own work environment. But the difficulty, because of the domestic load gap, is women still do not scale their businesses to the same degree. We don't
Right.
have the same authority and power to nearly the same extent. 2% of VC funding goes to women's businesses. So we just do not scale because we haven't got time. We haven't got time. We're busy still at home. So like it's like we're in the midpoint. I feel it, and I'd love your take on this as an American and living, in South Africa. I feel like we've made these. It's like that motion of the tide, like two steps forward, one
Mm,
step
mm.
back, whatever. I
Yeah.
feel like we've made these strides, and then I feel like the politics at the moment are wild,
Mm,
and it's like there's this battle between the old kind of ways of the hierarchy and people saying no, but this has to change.
right.
I feel like we're at this inflection point where it's going to go one
Yeah,
way or
I
the
agree.
other.
I agree. And I feel like one of the things that I am, kind of quietly exploring is that I feel like there's a gap in terms of a mental model around the way forward. We're kind of post lean in. That was exciting for a
Yeah.
little while when all Cheryl
Yeah.
was telling us if we just, and it made sense at that time. And I think what
Yeah.
we're seeing now is a lot of women who did that and then kind of went, this isn't necessarily about me pushing harder. The weight of being the agent of change within a
Yeah.
system is too much for a lot of people. And that's the reality that is what you are even today. And I
It
think the fact
feels
that
like another women's work thing, doesn't it? It feels like
exactly,
another women's work. Julie, I talk in my book about this idea that I argue that women today have three jobs. We have paid work outside the home, unpaid work inside the home. We have the work of living in a female body, and I divide that into categories of beauty, biology, safety, and sex. But then I would also argue, and I'm coming across this more and more, is the work of the emotional labor work of, yeah, this activism kind of stuff, making a difference.
right,
The weight of that, like, are you going to lean in and be the person who's the agent change maker, whatever? And
right,
God, wouldn't I just like to go and stick my feet up? Thanks very much. Right?
totally.
It's
Or just,
it's labor again.
yeah. And I think that's a little bit of what I see amongst like much younger women that maybe they're just like, oh God, I don't know if I'm not sure I want to do that on top of
Yeah.
everything else, which again, you completely understand. But then there's also like, okay, but let's be really honest about And let's be honest about sort of the era of your like 30s into 40s, because that's the issue, right? That's when real power is earned, and that's when babies are made. And so
And
it's
that's when the
all,
crunch point comes, and
and that's when the
that
crunch comes.
is when my brain
Yeah,
exploded and I went, this does not work. And I
it
have two
doesn't
little
work.
girls here. And what am I going to tell them? Like, I
Right.
genuinely, that was the whole conversation. The whole thing started. My friend, so my first degree was pharmacy. And I remember my friend saying to me, like, oh, she was saying, I would never tell my daughter to be a doctor because she was like, why would you go study medicine? By the time you get to be a consultant, your eggs will have dried up. Like, you'll have missed the boat family wise. It's crazy hours. It's stupid stuff. Why would I want that for my kids?
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking, like, oh, like, well, I had my own businesses at the time. I was like, well, she's not wrong about that because it's wild for me. My two little girls are like, am I going to tell them? Yeah, honey, go
Yeah.
fill your boots and like burn yourself out, and that's lovely. Or do you
Right.
kind of go, marry rich? Like,
Right.
like,
No, I know. Well, I think the other issue is that, what do we have if we're being really honest here as, Gen X women, what do we have?
yeah.
I might be older than you might be millennial.
No, no,
But what do
I'm Gen X. I'm full blown Gen X as
card
well, Jillian.
carrying,
I am
flag waving?
yeah, flag waving Gen
All right.
X, like,
Woohoo!
the whole shebang, the whole whatever the stereotypes are of Gen X, I'm in.
I think we believed, and this is, I say this to my kids about the work, the social aid work that I did too. I was like, you don't understand that, like, we really believed in it. Like, there wasn't the cynicism. There wasn't the like I really thought I was heading off to do amazing things. And I think our generation of women thought, this was the glory of the 90s and it was Bill Clinton and you had this sense of progress. You had this sense that we were going to start to do some amazing things, right? And I'm sort of like, it's not like we can sit here and I can chat to, a 17-year-old girl and go, hey, look, this is it. This is what you want. This is what you're going
Because this
after.
is bliss. This has been lovely.
This, it's like the poison chalice of what? The tiny number of corporate senior positions that, wow, you get them. You feel, you've either sacrificed being a mother or you felt terrible at the time. What does good look like? What are we selling them? What are we saying is what you should be aiming for? And I think that's why entrepreneurialism is like the last great potential hurrah. Like, okay, let's see if we can make this work.
We just need to do it for ourselves. Sisters doing it for
Just need to
themselves.
do it. Annie Lennox and Aretha Franklin.
You're on.
Um,
Bring her on. Yeah.
but so, if we want to talk about somewhere where self-development and activism come together, to me, potentially it's right in that space because I personally don't get any great excitement thinking about continuing to work with corporates to become more sort of female friendly or whatever, whatever. I just feel like, but maybe there's space to support female entrepreneurs to really do the work on self that will help them to have a greater shot, not a guarantee of success, but again, these are likely women who've done incredibly well on a many, many
Mm.
levels, but haven't necessarily consciously and intentionally developed the self-direction and the, drive and the all of that that's required to make their own thing succeed or to go out and look for the partners for it to really and I'm not saying it's the answer because as I'm saying that, I can see, 100 reasons why it's so hard.
Doesn't work for
There's
everybody. Doesn't work for
it doesn't
everybody.
work for everybody. There's no funding, there's no this. But
Complex.
also all of those businesses need employees too. So you know what? There's also that, which is not everybody needs to be the head of their business. They can try and create something and go and find somebody with the self-awareness of saying, listen, I'm not a great number one, entrepreneur, but I'd be perfect as a, your marketing manager or you're this or you're that. Why don't we come together and try and co-create some things. I
And
don't
there's
know.
business cases for this stuff as well, you know? Like, so I interviewed a lady for my thesis who started this accountancy firm. And she, interestingly, she called herself a female first firm. She hired a lot of women. She was really supportive about maternity leaves, really supportive about flexible work. She didn't have her own kids at this time. And she's gone from strength to strength. She's called Lucy Cohen. You might find her on LinkedIn. She's phenomenal.
Okay.
And she basically was saying part of her remit was she wanted to create this environment that was conducive to like low staff turnover. I mean, there was genuinely a business case for working in collaborative, supportive ways.
Right.
It works. It's
Right.
like the same as the business case for diversity on boards. Groupthink does not
Right.
work.
Right.
There is business cases for this kind of stuff. So the more women we can get in that zone, we need to keep talking about it. It feels like there needs to be some vision created. As you say, the difficulty with that is there's not necessarily one size fits all, but people pushing in a direction of going, we're not doing that old shit because, and I hard relate to what you said about growing up in the 80s and 90s and going, yeah, this is a done deal. Like it's fine
Yeah.
because feminism is done. We've kind of got the t-shirt. It's fine. We can go and fill
Yeah.
your boots, like not a problem.
Right.
And as my kids would say, versus reality,
Yeah.
like yeah, like it doesn't. It's not stacked up. It's not stacked up.
No.
And so women like you
No.
and me have gone to midlife and gone, okay, we've been there. We've seen that. We've got the t-shirt. What
Right.
are we saying? But Jillian, we need to be so vocal, I think, now
Mm-hmm.
around, and I think we need to be visionary about what's better because you have to sell somebody the hope and the dream of
Yeah.
making it better, making leadership collaborative and positive and energizing. And the fact that, and again, that was the bit that came out of my research as well, work is good for you, right? So
Right.
the idea that we leave so many people on the sidelines in terms of, and it's not just women or people with caring responsibilities and parents, there's neurodivergence, there's,
Mm.
disability, there's ageism, all the rest of this kind of stuff. We leave people on the sidelines who would love and get benefit from feeling productive in the workplace. Work is not
Yeah.
necessarily
Yeah.
just about paycheck. It's
Yeah.
about community and social cohesion and feeling like you're engaged or have a purpose or something to get out of bed for in the morning, feeling productive. Like work, all the studies show, leads to well-being. I think losing your job is as detrimental to well-being as divorce and grief. Like
I
it.
believe it because it's such a fundamental part of our identity. Um, I keep coming back to young women as,
Mm,
how do we
what
not
do we tell them?
send another generation down this friggin' path? Like, and I think what happens at the point of, a young, capable graduate. So she will likely, like most young, capable graduates, be so excited to get the position at, whatever the place is, and then feel like she is potentially on a leadership track or a management track or whatever
Yeah.
it is that you want to call it. But again, we go back to the reality that all of that looks wonderful until she decides that she wants to have a child,
Yeah.
or something else, or she just doesn't advocate enough for herself in terms of really pushing for power. I wonder if there's equally an opportunity to work with young women to really help them to nurture their unique, bold visions. Because I think they also get kind of flattened out and turned into these little cookie cutter corporate, you know, who, as you say, are wonderfully productive, love them, they'll work their butts off. But, is that one
They're good
satisfying and
girls,
meaning?
right?
They're good
Good
girls. They've
girls.
been good girls their whole life. So
Good
that's what they're
girls
going to
your whole life. You
do.
get rewarded for being a good girl.
That's right.
Look
So,
nice, speak nice, be agreeable. Get it
so maybe
done.
we need to start something that's like Good Girls Gone Bad in terms of like, I want to be unique. I want to be bold. I want to have a interesting portfolio of things I can do, things I want to do. I won't feel grateful that I got a job because wow, here I am on track in some corporate that I think gives me
Yeah.
all the approval and acceptance that I've been craving my whole life. Really, from the get-go, sort of say, listen, you're allowed to think a little bit more broadly, a little bit, because the worst thing you can do is go dut, 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 your whole life until you get knocked off it. And then all of a sudden you're sitting there trying to figure out what plan B is. It's like,
Okay, so we're full circle about the self-development and the
yeah,
agency and the autonomy and the
that's
confidence to
right.
say, I can do this differently. And it
Yep.
doesn't have to look like, because I think that's what often women are scared of, is that we know inherently, everybody, we are wired for connection. We are social creatures. And, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if you haven't got that safety of connection and belonging at the bottom of that
Mm,
pyramid, you're screwed if you're not in the tribe. So we spend all this time trying to be in the tribe, and it's scary to step out of the tribe. And so that's why the different vision is important, isn't it? That's why
that's
that
right.
you don't have to be the ball breaker. You can
Right.
create something in your own way and in your
That's
own
right.
image that works, that is empowering, that is
That's
insightful,
right.
that is adding value to the world, that is whatever. And that makes you thrive and makes you be uplifting and whatever. Oh my God, yes, there is space to, and it does start with the next generation. So as I say, I don't know, my children are 16 and 18 now. So these
Okay.
conversations are so relevant in my house.
And
You have a
listen, my
17-year-old
son is
son.
7. I've got two boys, 17 and 15. So,
Yep,
I
okay,
feel the
so we're
same
very similar.
way. Because what's funny for me, having been the good girl, having done everything, I was the one on the stage collecting stupid little awards and thinking it meant that everything was, I was paving my path to achievement. And that is the mental shift that needs to happen for these, is yes, it's cool. Nobody's obviously saying don't, accomplish a goal, don't meet the, but it's all extrinsic. So that's the thread, right? Whether it's the looks or the grades or the likes or the this, it's all the how the outside world sees you and whether you're satisfying their expectations of you. But your own, set of expectations, your own voice, your own vision, your own sense of self, regardless of that noise, which
Mm.
if I look at my teenage sons, who I never grew up with boys, but it's so fascinating because they are, whether through nature or nurture, much more like, when I ask my son, who's incredibly bright, but kind of like, as you said, nonchalant, about, why don't you want to run for prefect? Ugh, Mom, why would anybody do that? Like,
Girly and try
it's
hard.
just,
Do not be a
it's
try
try
hard as a
hard.
guy. Do
It's
not
try
be a
hard.
try hard as a guy. You will get the Mickey taken out of you. And isn't that fascinating that that transcends cultures in South Africa and America and Canada and the
Totally.
UK, to my experience? It is not cool to be a try hard as a bloke. You need to be nonchalant. You need to be, even if when they take the selfies and the girls are all,
Yeah.
and then
Mm.
yeah, and the guys are like,
Yeah.
aren't they?
Being very,
Like, I
very
will
relaxed
pose
about it
and I
all.
will whatever. It's so fascinating. So
And
fascinating.
yet,
Okay, so if we were going to do one takeout, like if we had a takeout today of like what do we need to do? What one thing that you and I could do to say, right, the future of work needs to look like what can we do in our own lives?
well, as I said, I mean, I I think there's a real need in a sort of young female graduate, whether that's high school graduate or sort of college graduate, to provide that support, to give them the
Program.
space, as you said,
Yeah.
to create the community where, because you accurately said the two choices that are set up for people, but women in particular, are sort of good girl or ball breaker. You're either to divert from that is to be like, whoa. And one of the things I talk about in my book and with this concept of permission in the 21st century is that you need to let go of that binary, right? I mean, that's so tired and it limits your sense of imagination because it's not about F you, it's about yay me, right?
Yeah.
So understand that you have options and choices now from a very young age that mean that you scaling a corporate hierarchy, which in our day sounded really exciting, but
Yeah.
all the evidence since then has shown us that it's, it'll work for some, it won't work
Overrated,
for many.
put it
It's
mildly.
totally, totally overrated. So let's let's look at what our options are and the ways in which you can work on yourself. You can, because nobody's going to come and, the conversation with those women those female leaders I told you about, they were like, yeah, nobody can give me what I need in terms of permission, agency. Those are earned. That is earned through experience. It isn't somebody, me or you, going to your daughters or my sons or anybody else and going, hey, you're allowed to, dream big or whatever. It's like, okay, but I have to
Feel it.
feel it, earn it, live it through the experience of taking my ideas to people. So I would love to work in that space. I
Mm.
struggle a little bit with, I don't know, that's the wrong framing of it. I haven't yet worked out where the money would come from for that because it's not a corporate thing. It's not it could be a paid for thing, but I think, to
I
get
think
it
people would
going.
pay for that. Do you know what's really interesting? A friend of mine from Ireland told me that. So, she said that in Ireland, the middle class parents hire career coaches for their kids in the same way we might hire a tutor. And I was like, I've never heard of this. You kind of go to the guidance counselor, the career counselor at school, and it's a bit naff.
Yeah,
But she said, no, 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 there are career coaches out there, and that's their bread and butter living, is they go and help teenagers um understand their skill sets and their values and their da, 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 da,
well,
and like
okay.
what do I want to do and what direction might I head in? I mean, even just like a private practice um, but I think young graduates would be interesting, wouldn't it? Because you go to university and you pop out the other end, and that's why there's such a thing as a quarter life crisis, because they
Right.
then, having gone through this structured system, their little brains fry because they go, "What? I
Yeah,
have to be an adult now? None of this adds
right.
up." Yeah, so
Totally.
there's some work in that area. So the work I'm wanting to do at the
Mm,
minute is related to these 40 and 50-year-old entrepreneurs who are leaving, or women who are leaving the workforce. So this big kind of exodus
right.
from the workforce, and women who are
Oh,
saying,
yeah.
right, I have a next chapter. I have spent the last 20 years um, I, in service, me as the bottom of the pecking order in my family. What is your need? What is your need? What is your need? I will sort all of you out. And then
Right.
I'm at the end of that. Again, that feels very cultural. Um, and I'm looking at women who've kind of got to that midlife point and gone, right, what's next? What's for me?
Right.
We are living
Love
longer
that.
lives nowadays. I have a whole vista stretched out in front of me. My children are getting older. Again, this is the position I'm in. And
Yeah.
what is my next chapter? So that's my whole
Yeah.
thing next, is I'm going to be looking at online courses, and I'm doing retreats in Portugal
Oh, oh,
for select
oh.
groups of
Exciting.
women to look at it's called the thinking space, to look at what is it. So getting to grips with, because I think by the time you get to your 40s and 50s, you have so much more life experience. You know what you
Yeah.
like, you know what you don't like, you know what you're good at, you've acquired all these skills, you've got whatever. But often it's still the confidence gap to take that leap of, right, what is that, what is the vista that's going to open up? And I just think women's voices need to be at these tables when we are discussing what the future of work is going to look like, and we need to be helping the next generation, and we need to be helping ourselves, for sure.
Yeah, and you know what I think is interesting is the potential to link those two audiences up, not in necessarily in the front end, but young women need role models
Of
of
course,
women
you
who
have to
are
see it to believe it, to do it, all the rest of it.
Absolutely.
Role modeling comes out in all the literature in terms of how do you encourage women into entrepreneurship. You role model. I remember going to this lecture when I first started my PhD, and there was this lecture hall, and it was to do with, it was a computer course on how we did all our research. But there was a load of different PhD students in the room, and you all had to go around and say what you were studying. And I said, I'm studying female entrepreneurship. And they looked at me like, they were like, oh, it's kind of a unicorn. Like female
What?
entrepreneurship. That's interesting.
Wow.
That's like,
Right.
yeah, a magical creature, a female
Right. Who
entrepreneur.
are
Yeah.
these people? Where did you find them? Mm.
Interesting, hey?
Well, I think that, yeah. I mean, I think there's sort of, for me, the really interesting spaces are the the young women, the female entrepreneurs, and then the ones that you're talking about, which might be the same as the female entrepreneurs, I'm not sure, but those, women moving into third chapter, whatever you want to call it.
Third chapter, yeah.
Because I think
Yeah.
that there's so much, I mean, we are in the same space. Listen, I'm acutely aware that what I'm doing right now, I'm only able to do because my kids are older. So they don't need me in the same way, right? I can travel, I can
Likewise.
be, yeah, I mean, I
And
couldn't,
we
it
still
actually,
have stuff to give, right? So, and
so,
that's that. So we have so much to give and life experience as well. So I think we need to massively lean into that.
mm,
Jillian, I'm really conscious of your time and we're coming up for the
yeah,
hour.
I
So
need to get the
I'm
move
going to
on.
say thank you. I'm going to stop
Yeah,
recording it. I'm going to say thank you so, so much for
yeah,
that
thank you.
conversation, which was
A
fabulous. It was
hundred
such
percent.
a delight to speak to you. Your book is The 10 Permissions, isn't it?
Mm,
Mine
yeah,
is Can Women Really Have It All? Yours is on Amazon as well.
yes, yes,
And you've got your website and stuff too. Yeah.
I do,
Where
yeah.
should
And
people
let's
connect with you? Is it
The
LinkedIn or where
website,
should they mainly go?
LinkedIn is, I'm super active on LinkedIn, but obviously the website is there as a sort of one-stop shop. But yeah, LinkedIn is a great place to have these conversations. I mean,
There's some great conversations happening there now, isn't there? Yeah.
there are, and it feels like it's gaining a little bit, and again,
Traction.
I think it's driven by this generation.
This, yes.
It's
Yeah.
the flag waving Gen Xers who are kind of going, listen, I didn't do all this work to get to this place and have you friggin' tell me to get back in my box. Like, no. So
Absolutely.
I think
Absolutely. Right.
that
I'm
there's
going
a
to end
lot of
on that
potential
note.
here.
It's
Yeah.
so
Awesome.
nice to
Great to
speak to
meet
you.
you. Yeah, let's keep
Take
chatting.
care.
Okay.
Bye for now.
Bye bye.